Hey guys, it's time for another scary video, and for tonight's scary video, I am going to be telling you guys a scary story from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And this video is actually going to be a collab with my friend Sabrina Bell, and I'm sure you guys know about her by now if you've been watching my channel for a while. I have mentioned her a few times on.
But we are both going to be reading. This candle smells so good. Oh my god.
We are both going to be reading Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Please go check out her channel and give her a subscribe. Her videos are awesome, and if you like my scary content, you're probably going to like hers as well. So please do that, and we are also going to be doing another collab of her choice. So subscribe so you do not miss any of that. This scary story is called The Window. Many years ago, there was an old one-story house that stood at the top of a hill. The locals called it Groglin Grange, and 3 young people lived there, a girl and her 2 brothers. One hot summer's night, they were all sitting out on the veranda, enjoying the cool air. They watched the sunset, and as the moon was rising over the trees, they decided to go to bed. A few hours later, the girl was lying in bed, unable to sleep with the heat. She was gazing out the window, watching the moon move across the sky, when something suddenly caught her eye. She saw 2 small lights moving through the woods near the graveyard at the bottom of the hill. They looked like the eyes of some strange animal, but she couldn't make out what kind of animal it was. She kept her eyes on the woods, and then something stepped out of the shadows. Something ghastly. It was coming up the hill towards the house. For a few minutes, she lost sight of it. Then she saw it coming across the lawn towards her window. It looked something like a man, yet it didn't. As she watched it, the most uncontrollable horror seized her. She wanted to run from her room, but the door was right next to her window, and she was afraid the creature would see her. She wanted to scream, but her tongue felt like it was glued to the roof of her mouth. She rushed to the door, but before she could open the lock, she heard a at the window. When she turned around, she saw a hideous shrunken brown face with flaming eyes glaring in at her. She tried to scream, but she was so frightened that she couldn't make a sound. The creature broke a pane of glass in the window. Then, it reached in with long bony fingers, unlocked the window, and crawled inside. The girl tried to escape, but the creature caught her by the hair. It dragged her over to the bed, then pulled back her head and sank its teeth into her throat. She let out a blood-curdling scream and fainted. When her brothers heard her scream, they rushed to her room, but they couldn't get in because the door was locked. By the time they managed to break down the door, the creature was gone. Their sister was lying unconscious on the bed, bleeding from the wound in her neck. While one of the brothers grabbed a towel and tried to stop the bleeding, the other took off after the creature and chased it down the hill. The thing fled through the moonlight, taking enormous strides, and soon he lost sight of it near the graveyard. The brother went back to the house to see if he could help his sister. The girl was scared and badly hurt, so they took her to the hospital where her wound was disinfected. The doctor put a bandage around her neck, and she had to stay in the hospital for a few days. Gradually, the wound began to heal, and the doctor said she was well enough to go home. The brothers reported the incident to the police, but they couldn't figure out what had happened. They said it was probably a lunatic who escaped from the local asylum. The brothers didn't want the girl to come back to the house and stay in the same room, but she insisted. After all, she said, lunatics don't escape from the asylum every day. But just in case, the brothers slept in the room across the hall and kept loaded pistols on their bedside tables. The winter passed peacefully and happily, but one night, a couple of months later, the girl was awakened by a scratching sound at the window. When she opened her eyes, she saw the same hideous brown shrunken face staring in at her. This time, she screamed as loud as she could. She screamed with all of her might, and her brothers grabbed their pistols and came running. The creature took off, but the brothers chased it down the hill. One of them took aim and fired a shot at it, hitting it in the leg. The creature fell over, but it got up and managed to limp over to the graveyard wall. The brothers watched as it scrambled over the wall and seemed to disappear into an old burial vault. The next day, the girl and her brothers went down to the church and demanded that the priest open up the burial vault. Inside, there was a horrifying scene. The coffins had been broken open, and bones and rotting flesh were scattered all over the floor. Only one of the coffins had been left intact. When they opened it, there lay the same hideous, withered, and shriveled creature that had attacked the girl. When the priest examined the corpse, he found a bullet in its leg. They did the only thing they knew of to rid themselves of a vampire. The priest built a roaring blaze outside the vault. Then the brothers dragged out the shrunken body and tossed it on the flames. They watched the corpse burn until there was nothing left of it but ashes. So yeah, that was my little scary story to tell in the dark for you guys. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a big ol' thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you have not already and become a morbid maniac. And also, please leave me a comment and let me know what you think. And don't forget to go over to Sabrina's channel and subscribe. I don't know how I feel about this story. I thought that it was pretty creepy, and this was something that was definitely a part of my childhood, and it always seemed to creep me out when I was younger. So I thought I would bring it back and make a video on it. Bye.
Hello everyone, what's up, Melanie? Today I'm here with a story from a book that's actually a collection of short spooky stories. I'm Sabrina, and you probably know that. Hi. I also have a channel in which I talk about creepy things and spooky stories and all of that horror stuff. And I'm here today to collab with Melanie. I picked a story that I found very interesting and spooky, and I kind of relate to the main characters, so let's begin. So there was this girl named Jo who was always late for Sunday morning mass at her church. She would always forget to set her alarm, so she would always wake up late. One day she got tired of hearing her parents complain about that, so she promised herself that she would never be late for church ever again. One Sunday, Jo woke up at midnight thinking she was late again, completely unaware of what time it was. And all she could think about was how late she was and how her parents would be mad at her for it. So she got dressed and ran out the door without ever looking at the clock. Sure, it was dark outside, but it was usually dark that time of year. The street was completely empty and very quiet. When she heard the church bell ring, she started walking faster. So she decided to take a shortcut to the cemetery. She got to church just as the service was about to begin. She found a seat and took a look around. She didn't seem to recognize anybody there. She had never seen anyone there before. When the priest came out, she realized he was a stranger as well. The priest told them to pray for the soul of a girl named Fran, who had died the night before. Jo was shocked because she knew this girl and she was alive. So she took a look around again and saw a woman she used to know. This woman had died last year. She started noticing that everyone there seemed to have a weird skin, like they were too pale than the person who was in front of her turned their head, and guess what? This person was nothing but a skeleton. And she noticed that a lot of the people that were there, they were just skeletons in suits. She then realized that they were all dead except her. They were all looking at her, and they seemed to be very mad. Someone who was sitting behind her said, "Leave right now while you still can." She turned to see who it was, and it was a grandpa who had died 3 years ago. "You don't belong here," he said. "Run." She grabbed her coat and ran like crazy. They all got up and started running after her. They were super mad at her. I'm not sure why, maybe because she didn't belong there, but they were extremely mad at her. She was crying, terrified. She felt those skeletal hands grabbing her. She was freaking out. She barely got out of there alive. So she finally made it home and told her parents everything. I mean, this story's kind of not creepy, but spooky, you know? Definitely is kind of spooky, like, imagine that happening to you. Like, well, anyway, I'm sure Jo is never going to that church again, ever. So guys, that's it. I really hope you liked it. Melanie, thank you so much for having me, and I guess that's it. Bye, guys.